Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some injury updates, a few news updates, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Devils, the Canucks, and the St. Louis Blues. We'll touch on all of these trade rumors and news updates coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to the video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, we got another news and review here to discuss. As per usual, we'll start off by talking about some signings from our past couple of days. So one signing, I think it happened either earlier today or over on Friday, but it was a big one, as the Montreal Canadiens have extended UFA Mike Matheson. Matheson was in the final year of an 8-year contract with the AV of $4.875 million. He's a left shot defenseman, 31 years old. Over the past couple of seasons, he has been brilliant with the Montreal Canadiens, so the Canadiens, instead of letting him walk as a UFA, have decided to extend him. Matheson gets a 5-year contract extension, AV of $6 million. I don't think this is a bad deal for the Montreal Canadiens. Like, 5 years puts him until he's age, I think, 36, 37. Like, that's not going to be an overly great contract towards the tail end of like the last 2 years of that contract, especially if Matheson's play starts to fall off. But for the first at least couple of years, like for the rest of this year, he's on his current contract. And like I said, at least for the next couple of years, for the first years of that deal, this isn't going to look like a terrible contract. $6 million for a solid top four defenseman who can be a solid offensive contributor. Not a bad pickup here for the Montreal Canadiens. This is currently his 4th season in the Montreal Canadiens organization. His first year back in the 22-23 season, he had 8 goals and 34 points in 48 games. Then he played a full season 2 years ago in the 23-24 season and popped off, putting up 11 goals, which I think was a tie for a career high, and 62 points in 82 games. He was a beast last year. Definitely came a little bit back down to earth. Only had 6 goals and 31 points, so basically halved his point total from a couple of years ago in 80 games. So it wasn't an overly great season last year. And so far this year, he is on a better pace again. This year has 4 goals already and 15 points in 24 games. So at this point, he's probably going to be on pace for like 50 to 60 points and around like 10 to 15 goals again this year. So it's very interesting out there. Matheson has been a really great piece. He was working really well with Dobson right now. So to sign him to an extension, I don't think is a terrible deal for the Montreal Canadiens. So very interesting out there. But key UFA defenseman Mike Matheson, instead of hitting free agency, has signed a 5-year extension to stay in Montreal. So very interesting out there. But that's the only sign we have from our past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. So we got a couple of injury updates. First, when it comes to the Anaheim Ducks, Mikael Granlund, who has missed the past 2 weeks with a lower body injury, is probably going to miss at least another week. That's a bad blow there for the Ducks. Granlund is a really solid piece there for the Anaheim. So seeing him be out for any length of period of time is not great news there for the Ducks, but good to see he could be back in the next week or two. While Lucas Dostal in net is going to be out the next 2 to 3 weeks with an upper body injury. It's a bad blow there for the Ducks because Dostal's the clear-cut #1 starter at this point, so to see him be out for the next little bit, not great news there for the Ducks. Matej Blumel left Wednesday's game for the Boston Bruins with a lower body injury, and it sounds like he'll be out for at least a little bit. I'm not exactly sure a concrete timeline, but my guess would be at least a few games, if not a few weeks. This is a bad blow there for Blumel, who's been looking pretty good in the Bruins organization. Valentin Chushkin, who had missed 2 weeks with a lower body injury, might be able to get back into game action on Saturday. That would be a big boost for the Colorado Avalanche to get one of their best goal scorers back in the very near future, potentially later today. Michael Rasmussen was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Friday after missing 3 games with an undisclosed injury. So Rasmussen's a really solid middle 6'4", so to see him get back in the lineup, big boost there for the Red Wings. Kasperi Kapanen has re-injured himself at practice and will be out at least 1 more week, potentially a little bit longer. So it's a bad blow there for the Oilers, who have been without Kapanen for the past little while. So a bad blow there for the Oilers. Jack Roslovic is apparently going to be out multiple weeks with a lower body injury after blocking a shot over on Tuesday. That's a bad blow there because Roslovic's been one of the better Oilers over the past couple of weeks. So this team be out for a couple of weeks is not going to be great news there for Edmonton. And Jake Wallman might be able to return from his current injury next week at some point. So that could be a really good boost there to get Wallman back on the blue line for the Edmonton Oilers. But bad blows to say that Roslovic and Kapanen are going to be out for at least a little bit of time. So bad news there for Edmonton. Warren Foegele missed Friday's game with undisclosed injury and is day-to-day, so hopefully he won't miss too much more game action for the LA Kings. But it's a bad blow there as a solid top 9 forward, and Fogel's going to be out for the next little bit. Marcus Foligno, who left Wednesday's game with undisclosed injury, was placed in an injury reserve, and Ryan Hartman, who was active off of injury reserve, he had a lower body injury. He was actually had his schedule being activated, returned to game action on Friday, so big boost there. Bad blow to see that Marcus Foligno's out, but good news to see that Hartman's in is sort of like a top 9 forward swap, so very interesting note there. JG Pagnotta, who is out week to week right now with an upper body injury, should be back at some point before Christmas. That could be a big boost there for the Islanders to get their solid 2-3C back in the next couple of weeks. Well, for the Islanders as well, Kyle Palmieri left Friday's game with a lower body injury and didn't return it. It also didn't look good, so that might be an injury that's going to last him like a month or two out. So a bad blow there for the Islanders, as Palmieri is going to miss at least a little bit of time. But good news to see that JG Pagnotta will be back in the next couple of weeks for New York Islanders, so very interesting note there. Brady Tkachuk, who missed 20 games after having hand surgery, returned to game action on Friday, so big boost there for the Senators as they're getting one of their key forward pieces back into the lineup. William Nylander missed Friday's game with an illness that's day-to-day. Nylander's health has been not overly great this year for the Maple Leafs, so to see him go back out with an injury is not overly good news. And Olli Maatta missed Wednesday's game with an undisclosed injury and has been placed on injured reserve, so a solid third pair of defensemen being placed on injured reserve is not something you'd like to see if you are the Utah Mammoth. So very interesting note there, but those are some very interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, going over to some recalls, some reassignments, and some waiver updates. Not a whole bunch of things to talk about here. Reed Schaefer, Nashville, Scott Morrow in NYR, Lundmark in Tampa, and Rooney in Utah were all recalled, while Gustafsson in Detroit, Abu-Kubel in Minnesota, and Groshev in Tampa were all re-signed. So very interesting note there. The Bolts have a couple of injuries, but they're mostly on the blue line at this point in time, so they needed a spare defenseman instead of a spare forward, so they swap Lundmark and Groshev to get some more AHL playing minutes, while Lundmark's going to be a solid spare defenseman for the Bolts. Kevin Rooney was recalled by Utah because of the injury to Olli Maatta. Scott Morrow was recalled by the New York Rangers because they needed some more defensive help with Will Borgenstad still being up in the air. And Reed Schaefer was recalled by the Nashville Predators. That's a big recall there for the Predators. Schaefer was one of the big pieces they got in the Matthias Ekholm deal, so we shall see how he does. He seems like he could be a really solid bottom 6 forward at the NHL level, so very interesting recalls there. While Eric Gustafsson was sent down by the Detroit Red Wings because of the activation of Michael Rasmussen, and after the activation of Ryan Hartman, the Wild did not need Nicholas Abu-Kubel at the NHL level anymore, so they sent him to the minors. So some very interesting recalls and reassignments from our past couple of days. Next, going over to some waiver updates. Sammy Blais, who we talked about in our last video, was placed on waivers by the Toronto Maple Leafs. They said there was a possibility he may be able to be reclaimed by Montreal, who originally placed him on waivers during training camp. I also thought there might be a team or two out there who want to have like a solid bottom 6 forward who might try and put in a claim for Sammy Blais, but apparently Montreal did wind up reclaiming Sammy Blais, so he's going to go back in the Montreal Canadiens organization. I'm not sure if the Canadiens were the only team who made a waiver claim for him, so they might be able to send him down to the minors. I'm not 100% sure on that, but he's at least gone back to the Montreal Canadiens organization, so we should wait and see what happens there with Sammy Blais, but he has been claimed off of waivers by the Montreal Canadiens, which isn't too surprising in my opinion, so very interesting note there. Those are all the recalls, reassignments, and waiver updates from our past couple of days. Just had a couple of other very quick news updates here when it comes to some very interesting things. According to some recent reports, the Winnipeg Jets are not looking for a replacement for Connor Hellebuyck, at least in the short term. Hellebuyck's going to be out until probably after Christmas, potentially after the new year, with a injury after having, I think it was surgery or something like that. So because of that, there's led some people to believe that maybe the Jets will try and look for like a short-term stopgap at the NHL level until Hellebuyck comes back. But according to some recent reports, the Jets are perfectly fine with having Milic and Comrie be the two tandem goaltenders for the time being until Hellebuyck is able to get back. So don't expect the Winnipeg Jets to go out and try and go after some forward help, except they'll probably try to just run with Milic and Comrie. So very interesting note there. Going over to the Calgary Flames, the Flames have signed 4 key front office people to 2-year contract extensions, including GM Craig Conroy. So very interesting note there, they've extended GM Craig Conroy as well as President of Hockey Ops Don Maloney and both of their assistant GMs to 2-year extensions. So very interesting note there, but the Flames have signed their front office. I'm not exactly sure about the other 3 guys, but I love Conroy getting a 2-year extension. I think he's done some really good work there in the Calgary Flames organization as the GM, so very interesting note there. But Conroy has been a really solid GM for the Calgary Flames, and he gets a 2-year deal because of it, so very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to one very interesting thing with the Florida Panthers. This is not something for right now, but something that could have happened way earlier, a couple of years ago, and that is that the Florida Panthers were actually considering an offer sheet of Bolts forward Nikita Kucherov all the way back when he was an RFA. So coming out of, I think it was his ELC, the Bolts wound up signing Nikita Kucherov to, I think it was like a 3 or 4 year deal at like just over $5 million or just under $5 million, sort of like signed into a bridge deal. Now looking back at it, we know that really worked out for both the Bolts and Kucherov, because Kucherov stayed there. He would eventually get a long-term deal with high money, and he would help the Bolts go to back-to-back Stanley Cups and win back-to-back Stanley Cups and go to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. But apparently the Panthers, back I think it was in 2017 or 2016, did have discussions about offer sheeting him. Apparently they were ready to make an offer sheet worth their first, second, and third round pick to Tampa to try and pry him and get him to the other Florida team. So that would have been very interesting. Like if Kucherov had signed an offer sheet and gone to the Florida Panthers, like maybe the Bolts never win 3 straight cups. That is a very likely possibility. And maybe the Panthers are better earlier than they have been in the past couple of years. So very interesting note there. I'm not exactly sure what would have happened if that was the case, but very interesting note there that some recent reports have come out saying that the Panthers actually did discuss an offer sheet about Nikita Kucherov before he wound up signing with the Tampa Bay Lightning in the 2016 or 2017 offseason. So very interesting note there. Make of it what you will, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this situation down in the comment section below. How would it have looked if Kucherov had gone to Florida all those years ago? So very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we've got a couple of trade rumors here to talk about. First, with the St. Louis Blues. According to Nick Kyperos, according to some of his sources he's been talking to, now Kyperos isn't like guys like Friedman and to some extent Saravalli. He's not the most connected insider, but he has had some pretty good insights. So he says that his sources he's been talking to are saying that Justin Faulk's name is very much out there in the St. Louis Blues organization, and he says that specifically the other teams are sort of viewing Justin Faulk as a backup plan. So he says that Andersson is sort of the big fish, the one that everyone who is looking for a top for the defenseman really wants to try and go after. So he says that for teams who wind up missing out on Andersson, and there's definitely going to be a couple of them, they'll probably circle back to St. Louis and try and pry Justin Faulk out of the St. Louis Blues organization. Faulk does have a little bit more term and could help with the team for not only this playoff run, but next playoff run. But Andersson's younger, he's cheaper, and he'd be a very good ask for a lot of other teams. So it seems like while Faulk is not the main target at this point in time, and it is Andersson, it seems that there is still a lot of generated interest in Justin Faulk. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Justin Faulk move at some point before the trade deadline. But given the fact it sounds like it'll have to be happening after Rasmus Andersson trade, I think we probably have to wait at least a couple of weeks, if not a month or two, before we see a Justin Faulk deal. So very interesting note there, but I completely agree. Faulk's got to be one of the top defensive candidates, trade candidates on the trade market right now. So I think if there were some teams out there who would have the opportunity to try and go after him, I think they would. So very interesting note there, but keep your eye on Justin Faulk, because if some teams miss out on Rasmus Andersson, seems like he might be the backup option, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to David Pagnotta, he was talking about the New Jersey Devils and Nashville Preds, and he says regarding Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos, one team he has heard has definitely been checking around the Nashville Preds and trying to maybe acquire one of those two guys is the New Jersey Devils. We've heard about the New Jersey Devils before, how they could be looking for some sort of a role player, but wouldn't be opposed to adding another top 6 elite level talent. Imagine Stamkos, because the Devils are pretty good down the middle with guys like Hughes once he gets back and Hischier. But imagine Stamkos playing on a wing with guys like Hughes, Hischier, Meyer, Palat, or even Marchessault. Like, those would be some massive upgrades for the New Jersey Devils. The Devils are in a very competitive Metro Division right now. They're still currently leading going into Saturday's game action, but it's going to be very close to see how everything pans out after the game actions on Saturday, November 29th. So we should wait and see on that. No guarantees by any means that the Devils do pull off a deal regarding Stamkos and Marchessault, but these two might be sort of buy low guys because they don't think they have a ton of value. So I think it wouldn't take too much compared to some of these other guys like Kyrou or Forsberg. Like, I don't think it would would take too much to pry a guy like Marchessault Stamkos out of Nashville. And I think the best the Preds could probably get for them right now is like a second-round pick and a decent prospect. And I think the Devils, if they were able to do that, would do it in a heartbeat. So we should wait and see on that. But keep your eye on the Devils regarding some of Nashville's forwards. As according to David Pagnotta, they do have some major interest in Marchessault and Stamkos, so we should wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to the Vancouver Canucks. When it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, David Pagnotta was recently talking, I think it was on one of his radio hits, and he says that when it comes to Kiefer Sherwood, the UFA that's garnering a lot of interest right now, the Canucks ask for Kiefer Sherwood at this current point in time is a first-round pick plus another asset. So that could be like a low-end draft pick, a decent prospect, or they might want someone a little bit better, like maybe like a second or third round pick as well, or maybe like an NHL level player. Like, I'm not exactly sure, but it sounds like if a team really wants Kiefer Sherwood, they would have to give the Canucks a first round pick plus. That seems like a very steep ask, but in my opinion, I could see the Canucks getting it. Sherwood is the guy a lot of playoff-bound teams would love to add. Playoff-style guy, plays physical, plays hard to play against, and he can put up goals as he's shown this year, even in a lower ice time role. So I think there will be a ton of teams who would have some interest. I think there will be a bidding war for Kiefer Sherwood, and I do think the Canucks could get at least a first-round pick. I'm not sure if they'll be able to get a first-round pick plus another asset, especially depending on what that other asset they want is, but I definitely think they could get a first-round pick for Sherwood. I'm not sure who could be interested at this point in time. Maybe Jersey, Carolina, Boston, Tampa. I could see Ottawa have some interest. I could see Utah have some interest. Seattle have some interest. Maybe Colorado, maybe Dallas. Like, there would be a ton of teams at this point in time who would have some interest in Kiefer Sherwood. So because of that, I do believe personally that we could see Sherwood be dealt for a first-round pick, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. So I'll have to wait and see on that. But that's what I want to talk for today. I'll let you guys thoughts. Do the Canucks get a first-round pick plus for Kiefer Sherwood when they do trade him? Do the New Jersey Devils try and go after Marchessault and Stamkos? And do the St. Louis Blues wind up dealing with Justin Faulk after Rasmus Andersson is dealt? Definitely your thoughts on all of that, plus all the news, rumors, analysis, things like that. So that's all I'm going to talk for today. We're going to like this video, and if you're related to subscribe below. Thank you for all your support. I would never be able to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. Also a blog, talking news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I will link to that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.